The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops this week condemned some of the executive orders.
Just because we were founded by immigrants doesn't mean 240-some years later we have to have the worst immigration policy in the world. Like, that was such a great retort there.
As a practicing Catholic, I was actually heartbroken by that statement. And I think that the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops needs to actually look in the mirror a little bit and recognize that when they receive over $100 million to help resettle illegal immigrants, are they worried about humanitarian concerns, or are they actually worried about their bottom line?
In my humble opinion, and as Holy Roman Emperor, if I should ever be elected to the office, I will forbid the Catholic Church anywhere on planet Earth from taking a single dime of government-granted money to participate in government-run programs.
And what has happened is our bishops, God bless them, and we should pray for them, have gotten very used to this cash cow called the U.S. federal government.
Catholic NGOs have pocketed $5.2 billion.
By the way, my name is Joe McClane. I host a radio program called A Catholic Take, where we look at the world through a Catholic lens. I'd love for you to hang out with us. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below.
And listen to JD Vance. We'll come back to the Mason thing in a second. This is JD Vance and Face the Nation. Have a listen.
Area that you campaigned on quite a lot, and there was a flurry of activity on, and that has to do with immigration.
Sure.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops this week condemned some of the executive orders signed by President Trump, specifically those allowing immigration and customs enforcement to enter churches and to enter schools. Do you personally support the idea of conducting a raid or enforcement action in a church service, at a school?
Well, let me address this. Of course, if you have a person who is convicted of a violent crime, whether they're an illegal immigrant or a non-illegal immigrant, you have to go and get that person to protect the public safety. That's not unique to immigration. But let me just address this particular issue, Margaret, because as a practicing Catholic, I was actually heartbroken by that statement. And I think that the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops needs to actually look in the mirror a little bit and recognize that when they receive over $100 million to help resettle illegal immigrants, are they worried about humanitarian concerns, or are they actually worried about their bottom line? We are going to enforce immigration law. We're going to protect the American people.
Yeah.
Donald Trump promised to do that. And I believe the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, if they're worried about the humanitarian costs of immigration enforcement, let them talk about the children who have been sex trafficked because of the wide open border of Joe Biden.
You personally
let them talk
support them
about
going into
people like
schools
Lincoln
and
Riley
churches.
who were brutally murdered. I support us doing law enforcement against violent criminals, whether they're illegal immigrants or anybody else, in a way that keeps us safe. Let me ask this question, Margaret. Let's separate the immigration issue. If you had a violent murderer in a school, of course I want law enforcement to go and get that person out.
Of course.
So what's the point of the question?
This is it was a fiery conversation. We're going to put a link to it in the show notes if you want to watch the entirety of it. I've listened to it a few times. I think we got Mike back. Mike, are you back? Or were you just doing a secret Freemason thing behind the scenes there? What were you?
Sorry, you saw how they censored me, so we'll shut up about that, but move on to this great conversation where Vice President Vance availed himself very well. And, you know, this is his talent, Joe. He goes into these very hostile environments, and he's nothing but charming. He turns on the charm. He's sharp as a tack. I don't know how he got in the Marines as smart as he is. Anyway, but I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, he is just a brilliant young man. He's our first millennial who sat in either the presidency or vice presidency, and he just does a great job. And his points are just spot on. And God bless the poor member of the media who misspeaks because he latches on to it. You know, we saw this during the campaign where someone would say, well, it was only 3. And he'd say, and you're happy with 3 murderers? You know, he's really good at stuff like that. And he sat toe to toe with this lady. And quite frankly, he outclassed her. And we saw the same thing in the debate when he debated Tim Walz. This is just a sharp, sharp young man. He's on point. His points are accurate. You know, Joe, I'm the son of immigrants. You know this. My father's family came over right before the Second World War. My mother came over pregnant with me. I have a heart for immigrants. And as JD Vance said in that interview, this is a country built by immigrants, but that doesn't mean our policy today has to be insane or stupid. I think he used
that was a great
stupid,
line,
right?
wasn't it? That was a great line. Just because we were founded by immigrants doesn't mean 240-some years later we have to have the worst immigration policy in the world. Like, that was such a great retort there on JD Vance. I agree. I said since they started running together in their campaign, I'm like, JD Vance just needs to do all the talking. I mean, the guy is really skilled at handling these tough questions and these tough interviews and debates and all of that. He's really sharp as a tack. But I think he points out something that's important for Catholics to understand is, you know, as Catholics, we should have some internal conflict, I would argue, about what our government will do with these people and what we are obligated to do as Catholics to help our neighbor. I mean, help even our enemy. We are called to provide for, just like the Good Samaritan, we are called to provide for the stranger. So we do have an obligation there. But I think that just because we have an obligation doesn't mean we throw out the common sense of order amidst chaos. You have to have an ordered society to better provide for our neighbor, number one. Number two, I would argue that, in my humble opinion, and as Holy Roman Emperor, if I should ever be elected to the office, I will forbid the Catholic Church anywhere on planet Earth from taking a single dime of government-granted money to participate in government-run programs. No, if you want to help the illegal migrant and their plight, then you do so because the lay faithful ponied up in the basket on Sunday, because you asked them to, because you made the case, you made the argument, and they, out of the goodness of their hearts, said, yes, I'm on the team and I want to do this, and put money in that basket. And then and only then can you use that money and that money only towards that cause. But not a single dime from government grants participating on any program, no matter what it is. I can't believe they take, according to this LifeSite article, I'm going to quote this. I'm going to link to it as well. Since 2009, Catholic NGOs have pocketed $5.2 billion, with a B, Mike, billion of our hard-earned tax dollars over a 16-year period by providing immigration-related services to the federal government. What is truly astounding is that over half of this amount was awarded in just the past 4 years. That's $5.2 billion. I mean, it's staggering.
It's insane.
Last 4 years.
It's insane. It's insane, Joe. And I'm going to remind folks, this happened during the Bush administration, the second Bush. His administration implemented this plan where charities, including religious charities, would get money from the federal government. And what has happened is our bishops, God bless them, and we should pray for them, have gotten very used to this cash cow called the U.S. federal government. And this is a problem. And while Vice President Vance talked about trafficked children, the one thing he didn't have time to bring up, and I'm sure he's well aware of it, are the women who are trafficked also by these coyotes who are bringing them across the border and selling them into brothels north of the border. Yeah. And Joe, as a Catholic man, I find this abhorrent that we are trafficking children and we are trafficking women, and our bishops are doing nothing but taking the money from our government and enabling these folks to do what they do. I'm not saying they're endorsing it. I'm saying it's allowing it. They're simply allowing it through inaction. Yeah. And that kind of inaction is just infuriating to me. So fire me up, Joe, because I'll go on for the rest of the segment.
Do you remember when the popes used to call for armies, knights across Europe to come to the rescue of pilgrims in the Holy Land because the Muslims were pillaging, plundering, raping, extorting, murdering, and enslaving them?
Selling into slavery.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, did bad things happen when the armies, some slight stuff, yes, 100%, like the sacking of Constantinople. Yeah, that was bad. That was horrible. But in general, they were, because of the murderous rampage of Muslims in the Holy Land against pilgrims, did the popes call for knights to step up and defend? Where is the call similarly for Christian men to defend these innocent women and children who are enslaved in the human sex slave trade or indentured servitude in my own backyard here in Houston, Texas, or in your city in America? Because it's in all 50 states, in every city in America is this network existing. But there's no call to rescue them other than coming now from the Trump administration. And so when bishops criticize them, it seems hypocritical at best.
It is hypocritical at best. And I'm going to remind our listeners, it's some bishops. Bishop Strickland has been very vocal about this and has for a long time. There are other bishops that are out there fighting the good fight, but they're the minority because they see the evil that comes with the money from the government. And when you take the money from the government, there are strings attached, whether you like it or not. And Joe, you're hitting on some very serious issues here. And I remember you had a guest probably over a year ago who said that Mexico was the #1 trafficker of children and the United States was the #1 consumer. And to this day, that horror of that thought just, I'm sorry, I live with it, and it just disturbs me. And where is the crusade against child trafficking? Where is the crusade against the abuse of women? What has happened that our church doesn't have the courage to stand up to evil? And I'm just now rereading about the crusades, Joe, so it's funny you brought this up. women and children, pilgrims, were being seized by the Arab population and sold into slavery and sold into the brothels in the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th centuries. This is not uncommon. Humans are humans throughout all of history.
Today.
We're all fallen. It does.
They're doing it today. The Arabs are enslaving Africans and selling them in markets today along northern Africa.
And Filipinos, Joe, and Filipinos. Yeah. Filipinos as well are on the market. So this is nothing has changed in our history. We like to look back at our grandfathers with disdain, and we are no different than they are. And the fact that not only our church leaders, but most of our brothers and sisters in the faith are unaware of this and are not taking a stand against it. If we made the bishops hurt in their pocketbooks, if we stopped dropping our money in the collection plate for that particular stuff, those things, we could shut this down. If we would contact our bishops, and by the way, my bishop never writes me back, and I do write him, but if we kept contacting him, and if he got the barrage of letters and we kept saying enough's enough, this would end. Michael Hitchborn has done great work on this stuff, and you should spend 10 minutes on his site. And when you're done, the Lepanto Institute.
Just go to his X feed. Go to Lepanto's X profile. You'll find plenty of documentation right there.
Well, if you don't want to sleep, Joe, you can read it because you're going to get so angry you're not going to go to sleep at night. But
he points out hold on, let me quote this real quick, and I'm going to show it on my screen here. He says, he puts this document up and says, we've paid out billions of dollars in minor sex abuse victim claims because of the grave scandal at the hands of some in the hierarchy and the clergy raping and abusing not only minors, but how about adult males mostly? They use that minors to sort of soften that, in my humble opinion. It's worse than that, in my humble opinion. But so you have the bishops that are paying out billions of dollars for these claims, and yet at the same time, they're going to take grants to participate in unaccompanied minor alien children program. The hypocrisy of that is stunning. It's stunning. And we're going to jump back into this story, plus the story of Joe Biden joining the Freemasons. And then we're going to out Mike Koeniger for being a part of the lodge in the after show. I've already outed myself. So
I'll see you then,
watch
Joe.
that video you can watch that video on my YouTube channel. I posted it on the YouTube channel yesterday.
Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.